Alright, so the main focus of this deck is to bring out Worm Zero. Worm Zero is actually not half bad of a boss monster. He has like no defenses, so he's destroyed by pretty much anything, and his attack is dependent on how many cards you use to bring him out. The best way to bring him out is to use at least 4 or 6 cards, but really, all 3 of his effects are good. At 2 cards, you get to special summon a worm-type monster from the graveyard, which is great. At 4 cards, he basically gets a Dark Arm Dragon effect, where you can just keep destroying your opponent's monsters, as long as you have worms in the graveyard to banish. And his his third effect, which requires 6 or plus cards, is you can just draw a card once per turn, which is pretty great. Plus, he'll have 3,000 attack if you use 6 cards, so that's what I was aiming for. To go for 6 and get lots of cards in the graveyard, especially Worm Victory, since he's one of the best ones you can bring out with his 2-card effect. Since the worm monster you bring out goes in defense mode, face down defense position, and Worm Victory destroys all cards on the field, well, all face-up monsters except worm monsters, so your cards are super safe since you don't really ever go into XYZs. Anyways, the way I went about bringing out Worm Zero was to just draw a lot of cards off of Worm Links. Linux? I don't know. And the way I wanted to do that was with basically Waboku-like cards, where he does get attacked, so he flipped face up. Because in order to activate his effect, you need to flip him up, and during the end phase of each player's turn, you get to draw a card. So if you're able to Waboku and your opponent attacks into him and he doesn't get destroyed, you get to draw a card at the end of the turn, and then on your next turn, you get to draw a card. You get to draw a lot of cards off of him, so this deck tries to kind of just protect him while also having other worms to actually support Worm Zero. So got some search cards with Worm Kartaros, and then Worm Zex and Worm Yangan, because usually when you run Worm decks, you can actually just run these 2 cards only, and a Worm King, and you're good to go. Just run a whole bunch of other support, because these cards all work really well together. And I kind of just threw in Worm Queen, because I wanted to try her out, and she ended up being really good with Viper's Rebirth. If you use this on Worm Queen, usually the monster gets destroyed at the end of the turn, but Worm Queen can tribute herself to special summon a worm monster from your deck with a level less than her, which means equal to or less than her, so you can bring out Worm King or any other worm monsters. That was actually really good. I was thinking about running a couple more Queens and a 3rd Viper Rebirth because it worked out so well. So yeah, Burying Stern Force didn't work out as well as I thought it would, especially since W Nebula Meteorite, when you use this card, which is central to all worm decks, you never want to run more than, you never don't want to run 3 of these. It flips all your cards face up, and at the end of the turn, it flips all cards in the field face up. At the end of the turn, it flips your worm monsters face down, and then you get a special summon a level 7 or higher light reptile monster, which is basically these 3 cards. So it's really great. Allows you to reactivate your flip effects. But it also flips up your opponent's monsters too, which are the ones that get buried with Burying Mirror Force. But it did still help me anyway, but I probably would have been better off with just Storming Mirror Force. So yeah, I probably should just switch those out because they do not combine well together. Anyways, I was able to bring out Worm Zero quite often, real easily with this deck.